You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min Football Network, bringing you another show live right here on our YouTube channel. Big hello to everybody listening via the audio platforms as well. Hope you guys are good, and welcome, of course, to the show to you guys too. Lots of you in the live chat. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for being here on time. Thank you for being here ahead of time in a lot of cases as well. And apologies that I was just a minute or so late starting, but looking forward to getting into this one because there's quite a bit to unpick off the back of the fans forum, which took place yesterday. Now, there haven't been any official minutes released from this yet. We're told that that is coming a little bit later on, and we haven't had any real official word other than what a couple of people who were in attendance have given us. In terms of the content of the discussion, in terms of what was actually said between Vinai Venkatesham and some of the Arsenal supporters who were in attendance for that event yesterday. Now, interestingly, one of the kind of big points to take away from this is that Vinai let the cat out of the bag. He let the cat out of the bag and told the fans that were in attendance that Arsenal are expecting huge financial loss, or will be reporting huge financial loss when they next report their figures. Look, I'm not surprised by that. I think most clubs in the Premier League will record the loss because we're talking about a period that is, of course, encompassing of a period where we went through a global pandemic. It was a time where there were no fans allowed in stadiums. It was a time where, revenue in that sense was completely wiped out. And of course, that means there's challenges. Of course, that means that, as a football club, you're going to have to take it on the chin and you're going to have to try and get creative. And I think, we've heard a lot of murmurs and rumors over the last few days about clubs raising season ticket prices just in order to try and cope with some of that. Everton, one of the clubs who have already made that move and kind of said that that's going to happen. And we're hearing that Arsenal are talking about a small rise as well in terms of season ticket prices for next season. So everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's trying to recuperate what was lost. Everybody's trying to stay functional and keep their heads above water despite going through a really, really difficult period. Add to that Arsenal have spent a lot of money as well. They spent significant amounts of money in the summer because it was needed in terms of the playing staff, in terms of the squad. We needed to update. We needed to upgrade in a lot of senses as well. And fair play to Arsenal. They did that. So the first kind of point I want to make here is that although this podcast is titled Arsenal to Report Huge Financial Loss, which is factual, let's look at the wider context and let's not lose our minds about it because, of course, it's going to be the case for a lot of clubs. And so the fact that KSE spent money last summer knowing that this was coming and knowing that this was around the corner, I think is something that we should see in a positive light. It's the backing of the ownership, even when it was clear that they were going to lose money. They didn't say, no, let's not do this. Let's not bring in players in the summer. Let's not make the moves that we believe are necessary on the pitch to get us back to where we want to be because we can see this huge loss kind of coming around the corner. Now, people always say this to me on social media whenever I kind of give KSE a bit of praise, because I do think they deserve some praise. I think at least since they took full control of the club, we've seen a much more aggressive strategy in terms of spending. And we've seen them kind of put their money where their mouth is a little bit more. And I understand there was a reluctance to do that without having full control of the club, right? Why would you want to prop up somebody else's share price when your intention is to then buy those shares? You're then shooting yourself in the foot, right? So that wouldn't have made sense. So I get why there was a bit of a reluctance and why Arsenal were in limbo during that kind of tug of war for power at Emirates Stadium. But I think since they've taken over, I think things have been Things have been a little bit better in that sense. Has the money always been spent wisely? No. Have we always brought the players in that we needed to? No. But that's on the football people, not on the ownership. Ultimately they're responsible because they are the ones that put those people in those football positions. But ultimately it's not from a lack of spending. It is the point I'm trying to make. It's not from a lack of spending that's the reason that Arsenal are where they are. They've backed the manager and Edu in some of their decisions with regards to paying off players, just getting rid of them, cutting contracts. And that is backing from the ownership. And people always say this to me, right? The common kind of pushback I get when I talk about KSE in any form of positive light, apart from being told I'm Arsenal's PR man and Arteta's lawyer and all of that usual jazz. The other thing I get is, well, it's not KSE's money, it's Arsenal's money. Whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, Arsenal Football Club, it belongs to KSE. It's our club in our hearts and it's our club in our minds. And as supporters, we feel attached and we feel invested and we feel like, it's ours to look after and ours to nurture. But ultimately, it's theirs. It's a private company. It's theirs. They can do as they please. They don't have to use the money of the club. People call it the club's money. They don't have to spend it and put themselves in further debt, which ultimately will damage the price of their asset or the value of their asset. They don't have to do that. It's their company. They can do, whether we like it or not, whatever the hell they like. And so I do think that in the situation like we find ourselves in now, where we needed to spend money last summer, and although we knew that the finances weren't particularly healthy, we've been posting losses for a few years now, but none, I don't imagine, as big as the one we're about to see, which Vinai kind of alluded to. It's one of those situations where you kind of got to say, actually from a spending perspective and from a financial perspective, they're not doing all that bad. The money is there to be used, and we know that they've made some of that money available by kind of restructuring debt in a lot of ways, and that's a smart way of doing it from a business perspective. But money has been spent, money has been used, so let's not sit here and criticize them for things that they don't deserve criticism for. I think there are a lot of things that you could level at KSE. I think the Super League decision was one that obviously, really upset people and really kind of, I think, put a strain on the already difficult relationship between the fans and the club. I think decisions like appointing wrong managers, bringing in bad people to oversee things, like the Raul Sanleys of this world, like going big on Sven Mislintat and then cutting him loose so quickly. All of that stuff is questionable, and all of that stuff is stuff that they should rightly be criticized for. But I don't think that you can. I don't think that you can give them stick in terms of the outlay that the club has put, even during a really difficult time. I think it would have been really easy for Arsenal to hide behind the pandemic and say, look, we're this is the process. We wanted to go big and we wanted to accelerate that process by spending bigger. But because of what happened and what's been happening in the world, we've taken a massive financial hit, and this is a self-sustaining club, and that's the way it's always been. And so we will not be able to spend vast amounts of money. But they haven't done that. They haven't done that. They went and spent £50 million on a centre-half. They went and spent big money on Thomas Partey, big money on Gabriel. They went and spent £25 million on Aaron Ramsdale, and they've continued to push forward with the plan, even when they had a way out in terms of an excuse. And I know a lot of fans won't see it that way, but I think that's something that we should be not praising them for, because it's their responsibility. Arsenal's success is their responsibility. It's on them. But I don't think we should be getting onto their backs based on that particular side of things, given what I've just said. The big financial loss was inevitable, but it's certainly been made bigger by the fact that we spent big in the summer transfer window. And that is something that they deserve credit for, because they obviously believe in this project. They obviously believe that things are moving in the right direction. And they obviously care to some degree about what happens on the pitch. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken that decision, because it is a decision and it is a move and it is a plan that will ultimately have a negative impact on the value of their asset, not yours, not mine, theirs. So I think they need some. I think I'm always a big believer that when you're talking about ownership, there needs to be some balance brought to the table. There needs to be some balance, in the way that we assess their kind of tenure and custodial, or custodial. What's the word? They're the custodians of the club at the moment. And I think that while a lot of people would prefer it to be someone else, myself included, I think they do bring a bit of stability, and I think they do bring I think they bring more good than some people would have you believe. And I think the fact that since they took full ownership and since Mikel Arteta's come in and they've gone out and brought players in and paid players off and always been quite big on the footballing side of things, the "We Care Do You" campaign has basically died a slow death, right? And that's died a slow death because in a lot of people's eyes, it was money, 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 and nothing else. But the money's being spent, so now you don't have a leg to stand on. And while I think that the "We Care Do You" thing at the time was the right thing, it's very clear now that a lot of those people that were into it and interested in it and were driving it had a very simplistic view on what the problem was and thought it was only about money. Well, actually, I would argue that in the first place, it was never about that. It was about being passive owners. It was about not showing that you care. It was about having zero lines of communication. And to be fair to them, I think that they've improved in terms of their communication. I think that they've improved in terms of sitting down with fans. And I think they've improved in terms of putting the football at the forefront of this operation and prioritizing the football, prioritizing bringing in players, if that's what's going to get us back to where we need to be quicker. So, look, this is not a KSE loving. I've got a lot of issues with them, and they are issues and kind of things that run a lot deeper, and they won't go away overnight. For me, they've got to prove themselves over a period of time before I'll be sitting here and saying, actually, they're not bad owners. They're actually quite good owners. I wouldn't go as far as saying they're good owners just yet. Let me make that clear. But I think for me, what they've done is they have obviously shifted their approach in the last couple of years. And I think that we have seen positive signs. And at the very, very least, we can see a plan. And if that plan works, great, they'll be lauded for it. If it doesn't, they'll be criticized, of course, and rightly so. But at the very least, there is a plan now, whereas in the past, it didn't feel like that was the case. And so I'm willing to give them a bit of time and a bit of breathing space and a bit of leeway to now execute that plan. And then we'll make our judgments with the benefit of hindsight. There's no point in being outraged about something that you don't need to be outraged about. There's no point in being outraged about something that may prove to be the right decision. Give it time. Let's see. And only with hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, will we be able to make a good assessment and judgment as to whether or not, it was the right thing or not. I think there's a few really good points in the chat, and we'll pick up some of those in just a minute. But just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button if you're with us on YouTube. We've got 27 likes on the board. Let's try and get that up to 100 as soon as possible. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please get subscribed. If you'd like to become a member, go one further and support me to bring you more Arsenal and football related content right here on this podcast, then you can do so by clicking on the link in the description. Okay. Wandering Minstrel says the owners don't need to tell us anything. They don't have to. We as supporters have very little say, if anything, in how things are run. Yeah, I think we've got a bit of a kind of weight behind us and a bit of a pull, I guess, because we don't go, then obviously revenue drops. And so there is an element where football fans can still have an impact and have a say. But I think you're absolutely spot on in that this is a privately owned company. This is a privately owned football club, a privately owned business. And no matter how much you or I want that not to be the case, it is the case. And so, when they do spend money, when the club does spend money, that's KSE spending money because it's their football club, right? So when people say, oh no, they haven't spent anything, they haven't done anything, they haven't put their hands in their pockets, all they've done is use the club's money. Yeah, it's money that the club has generated. It's resource that has come from the club, but it's their club. So it still comes from them at the end of the day. Like, I own a business. I've got my business. And when my business does well, I do well. When my business isn't doing so well and needs a top up, it's me that has to top it up. It's nobody else's responsibility. So the same principle really applies here, I think. Frank Ayala says it's an English product owned by a private American company that is structuring that product with an American model. Let's see what else we've got. Chris Carrick says Stan is a real estate man primarily. And some say the Rams is mainly a real estate investment in SoFi Stadium. Does this translate to his interest in Arsenal? Could be. There could be that element to it. It's, I know when you walk around outside of Arsenal nowadays, it isn't like the nicest area. And I mean that with all the affection in the world, because obviously it's a place that I love and I've grown up in North London. So, I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's an area that, while it might not seem great on the surface, is very valuable. It's very close to central London, and perhaps that is the way that Stan's looked at it. Maybe, I don't know. What else have we got? Anthony says top four is necessary for financial reasons. We can't spend another 150 million with Europa League next season. Look, I think that the Champions League revenue that we stand to collect if we manage to get in the competition is obviously going to have a massive impact on what we can do in the summer. But Arsenal is still recovering from years and years of not being in it, right? So you would imagine that a lot of that money has already been offset against debts that we've accumulated as a consequence of not being in the Champions League. I think for me, though, it's knowing that money's coming in and knowing that you can then propel yourself into a position where you can qualify regularly and bring that money in over and over and over and over again is what it's all about. And I do think that Arsenal will spend money. And that brings me on nicely to what Vinai said about the summer's plans. He talked about the fact that there is a very clear plan as to what Arsenal want to do in the summer. And he said that, unfortunately, the club couldn't accelerate the business that they want to do in the summer to make it happen in January for a number of reasons. He didn't really go into it, to my knowledge, in more detail than that, but it was very clear that there is a plan and they need to stick to that plan. And they're not going to panic. And as I've said time and time again on this podcast recently, they're not going to panic and completely deviate from the plan that they believe to be the right one. And I think in and amongst all the chaos and in and amongst all the noise that's been coming from the fan base and the wider football community, who every time I go on any radio show or any TV thing, the first thing they say to me is, oh, well, that was a bad window for Arsenal. That's the kind of, they stir it up. They talk about it all the time. And it almost gives us this kind of complex, if you like, about what Arsenal did in January. If the right players weren't available, then I'm glad that we didn't sign. Genuinely, because for years and years and years, we've brought in players who have been below par, not of the right attitude, not of the right mentality, and we've struggled for ages to get them out and get them out the door and kick them out and move them on. So, I'm actually quite happy that we've changed that. Yeah, will it bite us in the arse later on in the season? I hope not. There is a possibility it will happen, but I still won't. I won't sit here and say that if we pick up a really unfortunate injury and that causes a problem, I'll say with hindsight that, we left ourselves short and it was an issue, but I won't be really sticking the boot in on the club and saying, no, they were completely wrong and they cocked this up. Because at the end of the day, I think it's so easy to be a hypocrite. I don't want to be a hypocrite. What I think is right at the time is what I will stick with. And yeah, I can look back in hindsight and say, well, maybe I was wrong, maybe I was right. But that's the privilege I have, being in a position where my opinions do not actually have a direct impact on the result. So, yeah, I mean, let's just see. JW says, you invest at the start, and then when it can support itself, it does. Talking about business, that's how millionaires and billionaires become just that. Yeah, agreed. It's about placing your bets in the right places, I guess. Shabihi says, as an American who enjoys the local model of teams not moving in European football, Stan Kroenke is a huge part of the problem in America. I do not trust him as a steward of Arsenal. Yeah, look, and it goes back to what I was saying before. I still don't trust KSE fully, and I probably never will. But that doesn't mean that because there's that kind of thing in the back of my mind that I can't praise them for individual decisions that they make, or isolated decisions, isolated kind of strategies that they adopt, etc., etc. And I think actually the strategy that they've taken on now is the right strategy in order to give Arsenal the best chance of getting back to where we need to be. Good young coach, always improving people, young core in terms of the squad, getting rid of the wrong mentality, getting rid of the wrong attitude. And I think what was really interesting and telling was when Josh Kroenke was speaking on the road tripping podcast. I think that's what it's called. He said that Mikel knows exactly what it needs to be like, or what the environment needs to be like for elite coaching. So what that told me is that Mikel Arteta's come in. He's come from Manchester City, where they've won it all. They've been brilliant. They've been fantastic. They've performed at an incredibly high level over a very long period of time, and said, this is what needs to happen. And I was listening to some of Pep Guardiola's comments going into the Sporting Lisbon game, and he talks a lot, doesn't he, about the environment, and that the environment needs to be right for the talent to then kick on and win you things. And I think that that's how Mikel Arteta sees it. And I think that you can take the fact that he's moved these players out in the way he's moved them out as further evidence of that being his mantra and his philosophy that he's probably taken from Pep. But I think, yeah, I don't completely trust KSE, and I probably never will. But right now, I think what we're doing is right, at least in theory. Let's see what else we've got. Some bloke says, to me, the honest assessment about their ownership is that they've been very hands-off. Completely agree. When things are going well, that's the best kind of ownership you can expect. But in bad times, it looks like they lack care. And I think this is key. On the one hand, we as a fan base constantly say they're absent. Where are they? Bit of Delia Smith. Where are you? Where are KSE? Where the hell are they? That's what we say in the difficult times. And when they don't show up and when they're not visible to us, it does, as you so rightly say in the chat, come across as a lack of caring. And that's always been my big gripe with KSE. It's been the passive style of their ownership. But on the other hand, do you want Josh Kroenke making football decisions? And I know that the club appoint the manager and he will have some hand in that. But do you want Josh Kroenke, for example, telling Mikel Arteta who he should or shouldn't be playing? Do you want Josh Kroenke poking his nose into places where it's not wanted? And the answer to that is no. So I think that there needs to be an acceptance among the fan base that we've got to find some kind of common ground here, right? I don't want him in the dressing room. I don't want him having an impact on the football side, but I also don't want him completely absent when things are going bad. So I think he needs to find that middle ground. And I do feel, as I said to you guys yesterday, I think it was, that I'm a lot more comfortable with the idea of Josh Kroenke being the one attached to Arsenal than Stan. Stan, he loves his NFL. He loves his American sport. He's over there. He's doing his thing. He's the man with the money. He's the man with the power. I get all of that. He's at the top of the KSE food chain. But I actually prefer that Josh is the one who's a little bit more involved with us. And I think that is better than having Stan at the forefront. Let's see what else we got. Going to take a few more of your comments, and then we'll move on from this topic. just quickly, let's take this one from the Stilton Avenger, who says, unpopular opinion, but since KSE have had full control, they've worked to remove bad apples behind the scenes, added Dickie Garlic, Richard Garlic that is, and others to watch over their investment. They've even spent pounds. Yeah, I think so. Chris Carrick says, does the club report a breakdown of revenues, TV, sponsorships, tickets, merchandise, player sales, etc.? I'm not really sure what we're going to get from them. And obviously when we do get that, we'll have a good look at it together on the show live, and we'll get your thoughts and views on it. I wouldn't imagine that we'd get that much detail. If it were my company, I wouldn't give that much detail. I don't think you need to. I think it just gives people the opportunity to question and to pick holes in what you're doing. And I know I'm like, I sound like I'm kind of, I'm not wanting them to of course I want them to be as transparent as possible, because it gives me more information to do my job to a higher level. But I just I just think if sometimes I try and take my fan / journalist hat off / broadcaster hat, whatever you want to call it, and look at it from their point of view. I think that's the way you can try and make sense of and understand certain decisions that you otherwise wouldn't. And I just think that if I were them and it was a private company, I don't think I'd give anywhere near as much info as that. Big hello to CT Muttley. Hope you're well, mate. Hope you're good. Appreciate you being in the live chat, and of course appreciate you all who are here with us right now. Let's move on a little bit from the Kroenke stuff, because I'm cautious of going too far down that rabbit hole, because as I said, I don't want to be seen as the guy that's like kind of defending them, because it's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to see it from a fair and balanced perspective. And just like I was really critical of them with the whole Super League thing, I think I need to be fair, because I've sat here and said to you guys that I think this is the right way to go, that I think it is right to bring in, young players, progressive players, and focus on that. So I want to back off of it all a little bit and just kind of see how it goes. I think that's the fairest thing to do at this stage. I talked about Vinai talking about the summer and that there were plans. I talked about him mentioning that the January window wasn't, a shock to those guys there within the club. They expected a quiet window. Vinai said, I think we got some news on the fact that they're going to do some work around the stadium. It certainly needs it. It is a bit run down at the moment when you consider how brand spanking new and fresh everything looked when we first moved into Emirates. To see it now, it is a bit of a shame, and I hope that they do a good job of just giving it a little bit of a spruce up. It doesn't need major change. It's a wonderful place to play football. Just needs a bit of a spruce up in certain areas. So let's see how that goes. Okay, a bit of an update on Takehiro Tomiyasu. Arsenal posted a tweet yesterday, didn't they, of Tomiyasu back in training. But from what we understand, there is still a doubt around whether Takehiro Tomiyasu will be available or thrown into the mix to face Brentford on Saturday at 3 p.m. Now, he has been training separately to the group from what I understand. I'm sure he'll be integrated over the coming days back into the kind of wider team. But I think there's a good chance that we still see Cedric play against Brentford at the weekend. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I think given it's Brentford, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to them, but it's a side that we should be beating at home. I think that Mikel might look at it and say, you know what, one more week off will probably be the best way to approach this. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Takehiro Tomiyasu is left out of the weekend, or it's just short slightly in terms of his fitness. Okay, let's get some of your questions in. Any questions you got, any thoughts you've got on anything that we've been discussing. So just to recap before we dive into the questions section. Vinai Venkatesham at the fans forum basically let the cat out of the bag to the fact that Arsenal are going to be posting huge financial losses based on that last period, which we expected. But I think he wanted to make the point that those losses are going to be much bigger than maybe we thought, expected, predicted, and probably wanted to make the point that the club are still spending even during that, which shows you that there is commitment from those at the very top to kind of get Arsenal back to somewhere like where they should be. Also, Takehiro Tomiyasu, as I say, a doubt still ahead of the game against Brentford, despite being back in training. Okay, let's take some of your thoughts, some of your questions from the live chat box. Let's take this one from the Wandering Ministry. He says, are you happy with the season so far? I can't say I'm completely happy because I need to see how it ends, right? You can never judge a story until you read the ending. The ending will often, impact on how you remember and look back at that particular season. So I do think that, I'm kind of in a place where I want to reserve judgment just yet. But if you told me at the start of the season that midway through February, we'd be perhaps in the strongest position out of everybody to finish in the top 4, I think I would have taken that. I would have certainly taken that. In fact, I would have bitten your hand off for it, because I think it's a very good position to be in. And for me, while I still think that progress and a European finish would represent something that we can be positive about, the door is open now for the top 4. So I'm going to kind of make my judgment come the end of the campaign. But I have to say I'm happy with it so far, because I didn't expect us to be in this position, and we are. So that can only be seen as a positive, right? What else have we got? Riddy says, do you see us ever winning the league under this current ownership? It's really difficult to say. If you'd have asked me this, 2 years ago, I'd have said no. I'd have said definitely no. I'd have said hell no. And while I think that they're going about it now more than ever in the right way, it's no coincidence that Man City are the ones that are going to win the league, right? They spend the most money. They've got the most money. They've got the most stacked squad of incredible talent. There's a direct correlation between those that spend crazy money and those that win the league. It's how Chelsea rose to prominence. It's how Manchester City have done it since them. It's to a degree how United did it. Okay, there was a bigger element of coaching and identifying the right players during Sir Alex Ferguson days, but comparatively speaking, they could still blow everybody else out of the water financially. And that's why more often than not, they won the Premier League. So I think unless they're going to completely shift things up and decide that they're going to spend big, I think that you're not going to get sustained success. And when I say success, I mean like winning the league, like you're talking about. Look at Liverpool, right? Jurgen Klopp is one of the best managers to ever come to the Premier League, with some of the best players that have ever come to the Premier League. And he's assembled a wonderful team. But if they don't win the league this year, for example, which they probably won't, there's a good chance that Jurgen Klopp walks away from the Premier League having won the league just once. Does that mean that we look at him and say that he's not as good a manager as people thought? Is that a reflection of Jurgen Klopp? I don't think it is. I think Jurgen Klopp's done a very, very good job. I think it's a reflection of the fact that Liverpool don't have the financial muscle and power to compete with Manchester City and keep refreshing that squad over and over and over again. They did go through a wonderful period. They finished 1 point behind City, and then the following season they won it, and they've won a Champions League, and they've done great. But it's much more difficult for Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool in the way they operate to keep refreshing that and to keep, the level at the level that it's been. I think that's the big thing here. Manchester City have the riches to do that, as well as the best coach we've seen in a long, long time. But I just think that for Arsenal, being a Champions League club is where we should be. And if we're challenging for the league, then that's great. But if we do win it, it's going to be like Liverpool won it, right? Where everything clicks into place and everything looks good for a period of time. But to sustain that, you need to, over a long period of time, do what Man City do. And I'm not sure that under KSE will ever be able to do that, or they'll ever want to do that, which is why I'm not going to rule us out of winning the league ever, but, under them. But if we did, it certainly wouldn't be something that you're going to see Arsenal do for 5-6 years like Man City are doing now, where, okay, they've dropped one title in that period. But, it's really difficult to sustain that level of success when there are teams who can spend more, invest more, get the best players in. I think it really makes it difficult. In years gone by, you just said yes, because it was more weighted around coaching, or was more, success was more weighted towards coaching, talent identification. Whereas now, you identify a player you like. If you're talking about Man City and to a degree Chelsea, money's not really an object. They've got owners who run their clubs in very different ways, owners who are there for the football success because it's a bit of a passion project and a bit of a toy for them. And then you've got Arsenal's owners who I think want success, but first and foremost will run it as a business. So yeah, that's my take on that. Okay, going to pick up a couple more of your thoughts and of your questions in the live chat between now and the end of the show. We're about 30 likes away from hitting that 100 mark. Let's get there ASAP. Please do smash the like button if you haven't done so already. Really, really do appreciate it. Anthony Herbert says, so with this loss of money, does that explain why we've been getting rid of players to free up our financial funds? Yeah, I think to a degree. I think it's a way of Arsenal, first of all, saving some money. For example, now with Aubameyang's contract, I know we're paying some of it until the end of the season, but it now means that we've escaped paying an additional 12 months of Aubameyang's contract, which is a positive. So what you're paying in this interim might seem like a silly amount of money and money you don't need to spend, but ultimately it's for the greater good and you will benefit and gain from that later on. And I think that a lot of it is to do with making space ahead of the summer. And I don't just mean space in terms of the squad. I mean, you don't want to go into the summer with a target in mind who you're really kind of big on and you're willing to break the bank for, but knowing that that is reliant upon you moving someone on who you then struggle to move on, because that can really scupper your plans and it can cause you to have delays, and those delays can often end up in negotiations and talks breaking down, and could sometimes result in that player that you really wanted deciding to go somewhere else because it's just not happening. So I think it's partly financial. Obviously there's a lot of financial gain to come from those decisions, but I think it's about clearing the decks as well ahead of time. Like, we go into the summer now knowing we need a striker. We don't have to worry about moving Aubameyang out. We don't have to worry about moving Lacazette out. We don't have to worry about moving Nketiah out, because those guys are all going to be out the door. And that clears the way for Arsenal to bring a striker in and go all in on the striker they want, as opposed to having to worry about the domino effect that we sometimes see in the transfer market. Chris Carrick says, interesting debate on TalkSport today between Simon Jordan and Trevor Sinclair about whether Man City have bought their success. Liverpool have spent 1/3 as much per game won than Manchester City. Yeah, I think for Manchester City, yes, the money's a massive advantage, but you can't take away from the fact that they're very well coached and that you still have to get those signings right and you still have to bring the right players in. I think that it's great. It's great to see that they, of course, when I say it's great, it's great to see that despite that, let me reword this. Hold on. Getting my sentence all muddled up. It's great to see that having spent money, they've not compromised on the style of football. And they've spent money, but they play elite football and they get elite results. And that, for me, I look at that and I go, okay, well, you've had an advantage getting there, but you still got to maintain and sustain that level. And you're only doing that because you've gone and got a top coach and you've gone and got top players. At Chelsea, there's been times where, despite spending the money, you could look at them and go, football's dull, football's boring. Whereas at City, I don't think you could ever say that, especially not since Pep Guardiola walked in as well. So, yeah, look, they have bought their success to a degree. As I said earlier on, there is a direct correlation between those that spend mass amounts of money and those that win the title. It's impossible to deny that. But I don't think that completely takes away from the good work that's been done at City as well. So I'm kind of in the middle on that one. CT says, I must say some of your points are spot on, bro. Time will only show if ownership will get us back to greatness again. What's for sure is some of their past decisions haven't been good, so the trust is lost. I completely agree with that. And now it's on them to win it back, right? That's the way it works. Okay, we are going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to go and put my feet up, chill out, and enjoy some UEFA Champions League football this evening, hoping Inter get a result against Liverpool. Big miss though in the midfield in Barella. So yeah, bit of a blow that, but should be an interesting game. Should be a fascinating encounter. Look forward to watching that one, and I look forward to catching up with all of you again tomorrow. Also, I'll be back on TalkSport 2 tomorrow in the afternoon. I'll post details of the times and stuff via Twitter, so keep across that if you're interested in tuning in. Would love to hear from you guys. Always welcome your feedback as well. But I'll be back tomorrow with some form of content, I promise. So until then, take care of yourselves and stay safe. All the best, guys. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.